welcome Jenny Vargas, Chairman, Friends of the American Latino Museum.
On behalf of the Board of Directors, the staff, the Chairman's Advisory Council, and the hundreds of thousands of supporters that we have all across the nation, I want to say thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thank you all very much. A round of applause for you. Thank you also to our sponsors that made this evening's event possible, especially our presenting sponsor, Target. I want to say thank you also to Isabella Marie Sanchez, who's going to be lending us her lovely voice later on this evening. And I want to say congratulations to our honorees. You inspire all of us, so thank you all for being here very much. With your indulgence, I'm going to ask that you join me on a journey through time very briefly. So after 7 years of a long and bloody war of independence, General George Washington decided to have a victory parade on the 4th of July, 1783 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He invited someone to march alongside him that day. That someone was none other than Bernardo de Galvez, Spanish general and governor of Cuba and the Louisiana Territory, which comprised what is now 13 U.S. states. He invited him because he knew that without his support and the support of Spanish troops, General Washington likely would not have won the Revolutionary War. It's okay if you didn't know that fact, because there are a lot of facts missing in our history books, just like there are a lot of stories missing in our national museums. For example, we're told in elementary school that the American story begins in Jamestown, Virginia, when the British arrived in 1607 to establish the first permanent British settlement. Well, that's historically inaccurate, unfortunately. I talk about the fact that it was 525 years ago, on the second voyage of Columbus, that the Spanish arrived on the shores of what is now U.S. territory in Puerto Rico. And they tell us, and that was 114 years before the British ever got to Jamestown. They tell us, for example, that the American story of expansion goes from Jamestown as the British settled to the north and to the south, and the reality is that the story of American expansion is when the Spanish moved from the Caribbean up to Florida and to the west through Alabama and Mississippi and Texas and on to California and as far north as Wyoming. In fact, one of the things that really makes me smile is when I remind my friends from Alabama that they're basically a bunch of Latinos several generations removed. But you know, from then to today, the Latino community is now 60 million people, 18% of the population, $2 trillion in purchasing power, and the U.S. Census Bureau tells us that by the year 2060, Latinos will make up 30% of the population. You would think that there would already be an American Latino Museum in the Smithsonian, wouldn't you? Sadly, we know that's not the case. We know that we go to those national museums on the National Mall, they're beautiful, they're amazing, we walk through the hallways, but there are stories missing. Stories of heroes and innovators that are missing. Stories of families like mine and many of yours that are missing from those museums. In fact, in 1994, almost a quarter century ago, the Smithsonian itself organized a task force to see how they were doing in terms of portraying those Latino stories and contributions. That task force came back with a report. The title they chose for that report was Willful Neglect, saying that not only was the Smithsonian doing a poor job, it seems as if it was doing it on purpose. Fast forward to 2008, Congress passed a bill to create a commission to study the feasibility of an American Latino Museum, because that was one of the 10 recommendations that came from the Willful Neglect report. I was honored to have been appointed to that commission. And in 2011, we delivered our report. The title we chose for our report was to illuminate the American story for the benefit of all. And we had 3 basic findings. Number 1, that there was a clear and present need for this museum. Number 2, it should be part of the Smithsonian. Number 3, it really ought to be on the National Mall. The last report I'll tell you about was a study that was done by UCLA in a report that came out this very year, and it's on your chairs. And that report is entitled Invisible No More. And what it said of those 10 willful neglect recommendations from a quarter century ago, the Smithsonian has failed in 7 of those 10 recommendations. It's pretty sad, isn't it? Well, what we know, for example, is that there is a bill in Congress to authorize the creation of that museum. I invite you to look at that report, because it is time for a National Museum of the American Latino. It is time to make it happen this year. It's time because for over 500 years we've been relying on Latinos to fight our wars and to run our businesses, to tend our fields and to mend our wounds, to teach our kids, patrol our streets, write our laws, and share the word of God. The time is now to make it happen. And I believe, my friends, that we need a more complete and accurate telling of American history. Do you agree?
Yes.
I believe, my friends, that we need to celebrate Latino contributions, art, and culture. Do you agree?
Yes.
I believe that it's our duty to educate the public and inspire future generations. Do you agree?
Yes.
If you agree, then I'm going to ask you to please repeat after me. I commit here tonight to do all that I can to advance the creation of a National Museum of the American Latino. And with that pledge, my friends, you are now deputized in a cause and in a mission that is greater than ourselves, something that will leave a lasting, positive impact for generations to come in our country. And I'm convinced that working together, we can and will make it happen.